Crypt Fiend, just kind of knowing that that was where the undead player was going to send his Crypt Fiend. So in order to kind of not take any more losses with his footman, he does TP out there with his Archmage, and that was a very, very good fight for him, not losing very much at all. He's got his staff now, he's at tier 3, so he can quickly heal up a really low hit point footman. That one was below, I think, 7 hit points when he staffed him, so that was pretty interesting. For the undead side of things, if a human player or any player is actually trying to focus on something that you don't want them to focus on, or even if they're, I mean, whatever, if they're focusing fire on something and you have that Lich out, it's very important to go Frost Armor. This is something that's kind of interesting, and it's not a new tactic. A lot of undead players have done this, you know, especially I've seen it versus Orc and versus other races too, but you notice he's going Frost Armor first on his Lich, and I did this audio commentary, it must have been almost, I don't know, 6 months ago, it was a long time ago, I did, I think, an audio commentary on the importance of going Frost Armor first, kind of a different thing for an undead player, but in this replay, it really shows how beneficial it can be. It makes it almost impossible for bolts around, you know, to really be that effective. Not only is it going to take them longer to kill the unit because of the increased armor on it, but also their units are going to be attacking it a lot slower. So it's a pretty interesting tactic to go Frost Armor first. We'll see this going on again, plus you can coil the unit, so it's really nice. See, there goes the Frost Armor, although it is a little bit late. He's going to get that coil off, and that Fiend will get saved because of that. You know, the human immediately decides that's going to be a bad idea. I'm not going to attack a full HP Fiend with my 2 footmen. But he does have Tri-Hero out now, which is really nice. So, an interesting tactic too, although we still see those water elementals out for HolyHuman at the moment, he isn't going to end up switching off to Blizzard in the late. And the reason being for that is once destroyers are in the mix, you don't want to be feeding your opponent those summonables for their mana, or so they can absorb that mana and get more damage on, especially if you're going to be going Knights, which indeed HolyHuman is going to be going as well. So it's going to be interesting. So in preemptively knowing that most undead players are going to be going Fiends and Destroyers, definitely Destroyers are going to be some part of the Undead's late game. HolyHuman is actually starting to mass his Gyrocopters, and he's actually getting the defensive upgrades too, because when the Destroyers absorb mana, when they have mana to absorb, they do that splash damage with their orb and really take down these flying machines very, very easily. And actually we're going to see a few confrontations again later on. I'll make a point about it when they come up, when they actually happen, how the Destroyers actually do really, really well versus those Gyrocopters, especially with that splash damage. So a little bit of a skirmish going on, and HolyHuman's in some pretty bad position. He got his army split up, and he's going to have to kind of retreat from all this fight, which, you know, it's very important to know when you're in a bad situation. You know, if you don't have any scrolls of Town Portal, which he indeed doesn't here at this point, and he didn't when his Paladin died either, it's a little bit of a dangerous move here for him. So he's trying to keep his Mountain King up for as much as possible, and he doesn't want to waste that bolt on, let's say, a hero or something like that. He definitely wants to be able to use that bolt to get a kill. So target selection is a big thing too with this matchup. What am I saying? With any matchup, definitely be holding alt. I mean, I do it when I watch replays. Either that or I tap it every now and then. But during the game, it's obviously more important. You know, you need to be able to know what to target and when to target and what's a bad target. And really, a lot of that can just come from personal experience and seeing how you play the matches. You know, but if you know you have a little bit of a problem about target selection. First thing you want to do is to target, obviously, the weakest unit first. Heroes are generally a bad thing for target selection. Obviously, I'm talking more to the newer or kind of average player here, because a lot of the more advanced players are like, Shark, what the hell are you talking about? I know what to target, weak units, blah, blah, blah. It makes a lot of sense. Don't target heroes, obviously, dumb mistake. But some of the newer players that are just starting to watch replays, and even though this game's now for so long, we are always getting new players. And you know that because if you play ladder, you know, you're up against them a lot of the times too. So, basically, as a new player, try not to focus heroes unless they're very, very, very vulnerable. You can actually click on your enemy heroes and see what items they have on them to see if they're going to be a vulnerable target or not. If you notice that a Death Knight is at full HP with an Embalm Pot, a Greater Healing Pot, and a Scroll of Town Portal, he probably isn't something you want to target right off the bat and spend a lot of time doing that, because while you're trying to kill that Death Knight, he's going to be sitting there soaking up the damage with the Death Knight. That's the ideal target for him. That's the one he wants you to attack, so he can sit there and attack your units, the little weaker units like the Footmen and things like that, while you're just focusing on a really big tank like the Death Knight. So kind of went off on a little bit of a rant here. Now, this is an interesting tactic for interesting unit selection choice, I think, at this time for the undead player. He's continually making fiends. He's got a pretty large fiend army. He's at like 7 fiends. Later he's going to be, or actually starting up his expansion right now. When he gets that expansion up and running, he's actually going to make a second crypt and continually produce fiends. Now, fiends just are like complete food for these knights. So the more knight, you notice that HolyHuman's actually getting a sizable amount of knights, and that's because they have the fast movement speed, really high normal damage, and they're really good tanks. They're good tanks for things like those fiends, so they're really going to eat those fiends alive. And the counter for the undead to those knights are going to be those destroyers, and then the counter to the destroyers are obviously these gyrocopters. At least that's the way that HolyHuman's playing it in this match. But we're going to actually see later game how these gyrocopters are actually a little less effective versus all these destroyers, and how I'll kind of make a note of it that I've actually been seeing Dragonhawks used a little bit more effectively in this matchup versus destroyers, and that's because the piercing damage, I believe, does extra versus the light armor on those destroyers. They can't obviously use their shackle on a magic immune destroyer, but still being able to mass those and getting their piercing damage, I think it's piercing damage versus the air for those Dragonhawks, work a little bit better versus the destroyers. Now, don't get me wrong, if you get a lot of flying machines and you have, the damage upgrades and the armor upgrades, and you're up against a destroyer army who doesn't have any upgrades, obviously I think the gyrocopter is going to be a little bit more beneficial. But when it comes down to it, 3-3 gyrocopters and 3 versus 3-3 destroyers, I think the destroyers are actually going to have the upper advantage there, unless you have just insane swarm of flying machines. So, and preemptively knowing that destroyers are going to be very effective at taking out these gyrocopters, you see he is getting the armor upgrades on those flying machines. This is an interesting move here. When I first saw this replay here, I thought he was going to be able to take down a lot of this expansion, but the undead player ended up getting just completing all his summons at the last moment, and the only thing the human player is going to be able to take down there is that sacrificial pit. There's that secondary crypt here at his expansion that I was talking about. You notice the undead player is also towering up his expansion. I don't think a lot of undead players really do this. They kind of just rely on the fact that they can get there quickly. They'll summon a second necropolis so they can TP there on slightly medium-sized or larger maps, but they don't usually take a lot of ziggurats and upgrade them. It's a pretty big investment, and to each his own to figure out how it works. I find out at my level play that using these Spirit Towers and Nubian Towers at an expansion really work out. I don't actually play a lot of undead myself. However, when I play up against it, I find that it's very difficult for me to go into an undead base with the undead fiends there, or if he's got anything else kind of behind the lines there, and being able to play defensively at his base with some kind of offensive power coming from those Spirit Towers. I don't know, they're kind of underrated, and I think Nubian Towers too are underrated. I mean, don't forget, you can click on those towers and then click on the unit you want to focus fire, and it's just having like a slow attack on them if they're obviously in range of that tower. So a little bit of a creep check going on, a little bit of back and forth going on between the undead player and the HolyHuman right now, between Eric and HolyHuman. Just finishing off that camp there. Again, sorry about the shoutcasting a little bit. So you just got to try to make the fight happen in your own way here. HolyHuman has a pretty good advantage here. I mean, he's got a nice army. He's got 5 knights. He's got his level 3 Archmage, level 3 Mountain King, level 2, almost level 3 Paladin, which is going to be very nice versus this in these battles here. However, to counter the effects